Spfl predictions.
It's that time of the year. We now look towards the next season, 23-24, and try and predict who will be the upset, who will be the overachievers, and where every team will play. So let's get right underway with 12. I've made a last second change here between the bottom two, and it means we're back-to-back years. St. Johnstone, you're bottom of my predictions. You outperformed it last year. You weren't really away from the relegation battle, but you were never a goner, so good luck to you. But I'm just looking at that squad, the management, all that. I think you're one of the bottom two. I just think you'll finish bottom, and it means 11th place. Dundee, usually my motto is always Dundee bottom, but they made a lot of signings. They had to anyways, to be fair, because coming up from the championship. But for me, 11th place for Dundee FC, meaning 10th is a team that moans about finances. It seems almost like every day of the week. It's of course Livingston with David Martindale. If he says it one more time, I might listen. But to be honest, it's quite embarrassing that we have a team like that in the Premiership. That's so many financial issues, such a small club as well. It's just really sad to see. And maybe if they get a point deduction if it's financial, maybe that could really change my predictions. But for me, 10th place, I don't think they're really better than many teams, but I don't think they're worse than the two teams I've already mentioned. That's kind of where I see them. They're at like their own level. And we on to 9th all the way to 7th. These three teams could be in any order, but for me, 9th place, a team that not too long ago was in a couple finals in European, but we won't mention the European result against Sligo because that means League of Ireland has something over us. So yeah, of course that is Motherwell, and aye, she is fine, thanks. Then into 8th place is a team that was in the relegation playoff last year, and wow, what a comeback to stay in the Premiership. It's Ross County. As I said, a lot of these teams, the next team as well I'm about to mention, could all be in any order. So a 7th place, I'm going to put Kilmarnock. I just think they're the best of the worst, basically. That's the way I just see it from what I've just mentioned so far in the video. Now moving to 6th place. 6th place is a weird one. This team, I don't think they're better than any of the 5 teams I'm going to mention after them, but I think there's a level gap between them and the rest of the teams I've already mentioned, and it's the Pandas. It's St. Mirren. I just think they're in a weird situation right now where they're better than a certain amount of teams, but then there's like such a gap between them and the next. It's a weird situation. Even with losing Curtis Main, who got so many important goals, even as new strikers are dud, they have enough quality where they should just finish 6th anyways. If they finish any lower, I think it's a terrible season. If they finish any higher, I'd be surprised. On to the top 5. Now this is where we get interesting. 5th to 3rd. For me, 5th place, it's the Jam Tarts. It's Hearts, and they could have an interesting attack for the upcoming year. Obviously they've got Shanklin, and then apparently bringing in this Japanese striker known as Kasuke Tagawa. Sorry if I said that wrong. He looks like a very interesting player, was in Portugal last season. That could be interesting. That could be a very frightening attack like Aberdeen had with Dukamiowski. It could be interesting. We'll have to wait and see. But for me, Hearts, it's not due to the squad, it's due to your management structure. It's like a circus, 2 technical directors, a manager, but the manager isn't really a manager, it's one of the technical directors to avoid a fine. It's a bit of a joke, to be honest, and a shame for Scottish football. To move on to 4th, and it's another Edinburgh club, it's Hibernian FC. I'm recording this right after their defeat to Andorran's side, Inter, so probably if people were recording about the similar time, they might have Hibs even lower after that embarrassing result, but I'm going with what I had pre-watching that game, and I'm still going to go with 4th. They're linked with Dillon, who looks like an incredible signing for 700k, which is huge for Scottish football, by the way, to replace Kevin Nisbet, plus they kept Johan on a permanent. Boyle's coming back, what an attack. I feel like Lee Johnson's building something, but he's had some terrible results, in the Premier Sports Cup last year, and then obviously this result now. Then move on to 3rd, and of course it's Rangers. No, it's not. It's Aberdeen, of course. Barry Robson is building something there, and the 2 attackers, Dukamiowski that I already mentioned, wow, absolutely brilliant for Scottish football. You look in goals, Kelly Roos. They signed an experienced pro in Nicky Devlin. They brought in Reece Williams on loan from Liverpool. And speaking of loans from Liverpool, they got Clarkson on a permanent this time. Speaking of making loans permanent, Graham Shinney coming back on a permanent. There's so many good things about that Aberdeen side. I think even though Hearts had a firm grip, it seems, they bottled it, and now they've got this management structure that's just terrible. That's why I'm putting them lower. But I do think Hearts and Hibs should be aiming for 3rd, but I just feel like there's enough issues where I'm like, Aberdeen should get 3rd. And it means 2nd place now, and this is where it gets contention. The 2 different sides here. Some will say, oh no, it's hard time now, so we'll be like, nah, we're keeping it. And it's 2nd place, of course, Edinburgh City. And no, it's Rangers. This time it is Rangers for this pick. They have improved, but I think there's a lot of players that are question marks before coming into Scottish football here, from their attackers to even the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper's more known for FIFA than he is any of his actual performances, is Jack Butland in goals. There's a lot of question marks around their squad. They could perform well in Scotland, but if they don't, then it's just showing that they're continuing their bad form from elsewhere into Scottish football. So it's a wait to see, but I still doubt they'd win the league, but they may make it a tighter run throughout the season. So first for me, obviously, is Celtic yet again. A Brendan Rodgers Celtic, who would have thought when we were looking back at the reactions? So let's see what Dillon had to say.
Hey guys, Dillon here again, to continue what has been something of a yearly tradition on the Kevin Twist channel recently, my predictions for the upcoming 23-24 Spfl season. The team I have finishing last this season is Livingston, and that's for what I think are a few key reasons. The first and most obvious in my opinion is of course their debilitating lack of any sort of transfer budget whatsoever, meaning that they will be having to scrape the barrel for free signings and loans. This has been shown with what has been, again in my opinion, some rather uninspiring transfer business being done, with them bringing the likes of Mikey Devlin from Hibs and Mo Sangare from Accrington Stanley to the Tony Macaroni Arena. I am actually a big fan of David Martindale as a manager, to be honest, and I think he's done an amazing job at Livingston in his 3 years at the club, but at a certain point all good things have to come to an end. I do think this will be quite a rough season for Livy, to be honest. At 11th place I've got St Johnstone. To be honest, I don't see much great happening this season for them, as I think their squad was already quite weak, and they've most definitely not done anything to shake that image in my mind. They've made a couple of interesting free signings, with Luke Jepcott being a particular highlight, having played over 120 games for Plymouth Argyle, registering 43 goals and assists for them during that time. However, the main problem for me is the lack of squad depth. They've let nearly a dozen players go during the summer window thus far, with a fair few of them actually being experienced veteran players, and they still have quite an old squad as well. Not a good one for them, in my opinion. At 10th place, I think I'll surprise a few people, to be honest, by selecting Dundee. I think Dundee look like a decent side on paper going into next season. However, the main issue for me is the amount of new players that they've brought in, while a lot of their core from last season have of course left the club. They've made some genuinely impressive signings. Antonio Portales and Diego Pineda from the Mexican League particularly stand out to me as creative signings that could reap huge rewards, but I don't think their squad will be able to gel fast enough, unfortunately. In 9th, I've put Ross County, which some may see as an extremely high placement given the fact that they would have been spending this season in the Championship had Partick Thistle not bottled the relegation playoff. However, I think that there's one key reason for that they'll be a little bit better this season, and his name is Eamon Brophy. During his loan in Dingwall, he looked like one of the only players at the club who could actually score a goal, and now that the Staggies have made his loan permanent, I think he could help them turn a few losses into draws and a few draws into wins. He's someone that knows how to score a goal or two in the Premiership, and I think he'll continue to do so at Victoria Park. Now we get to the boring places in mid-table, and I've got Kilmarnock at 8th place. They showed last season that they aren't the relegation fodder some thought they were, and I think they'll be able to take another step up to solidify themselves in the Premiership, for the time being at least. Not too much to say about them overall. In 7th place, I've got Motherwell. No, I'm not making the joke. They showed last season that they're quite good, but Kevin Van Veen is an astronomical loss to the team, and they haven't yet replaced him effectively in my opinion, although that can of course change. I've just don't think they'll get too much better this season, but maybe not too much worse either. I've got St Mirren to repeat their 6th place finish from last season, in which they showed that they were a half decent side but struggled in the second phase. I don't think they've really improved much thus far in the transfer window, but I don't think they've got too much worse either, despite the loss of Curtis Main to the Indian Super League of all places. Should be a safe if uninspiring season for them. At 5th, I've got good old Hibs, who I probably would have had a spot or two higher prior to their back-to-back embarrassing losses against Inter Descaldes of Andorra and Blackpool of the English third tier, the latter of which they actually lost 3-0. Although, to be fair, it was a friendly game. I really like the signing of Dylan Levitt, but apart from that, I think their squad hasn't really got much better since the loss of Kevin Nisbet, and their manager is too small to see half the pitch from the touchline, so it will probably result in another disappointing season for Hibs fans. I love to see it. So, a bit of a controversial one here. I have Aberdeen finishing 4th. I would like to clarify that I do think Aberdeen are the most likely to finish 3rd, but my heart is telling me otherwise. They did so well recovering from their struggles in the first half of last season to end up finishing 3rd and obtaining guaranteed European group stage football, but that could be a curse for them, as I don't think they have the depth to compete on two fronts. Therefore, a very solid but underwhelming 4th place finish seems reasonable in my eyes. At 3rd, I have my beloved Hearts. Last season was a huge disappointment, mostly thanks to some terrible form under Robbie Neilson. However, I think things picked up very well when Stephen Naismith took over on a temporary basis. He has, of course, since become the permanent manager, although the Hearts board may well disagree with you on that one, and I think that the squad has strengthened well so far this summer window, with the likes of Callum Nieuwenhof, although an aerially dominant centre-back is still absolutely necessary if we're to push on and do well in multiple competitions this season. season. I think this prediction's probably liable to change. Normally, I would make this part dramatic and suspenseful, but to be honest, it doesn't even warrant it anymore. Rangers have spent 15 million quid this summer, and in my eyes, still look miles and miles away from Celtic in every single aspect of their squad and managerial structure. I think it will be another frustrating season for the Ibrox faithful. Michael Beale isn't a particularly great manager in my opinion, and I honestly don't see them really challenging for much of anything for some time to come. No surprise, at first, I yet again have Celtic, even despite all of the drama that has gone on with Ange Postecoglou leaving the club to join Spurs, key players leaving such as Jota going to Al Ittihad and the retirement of Aaron Moy. I still can't vote against Celtic. Brendan Rodgers is a manager that, while I don't think he's great at the very top level of the game, has proven pedigree in Scotland and in my eyes will probably continue Celtic's almost unchallenged dominance this season. Thanks very much to my man Kevin for having me on the channel again, and hopefully I'll be back here again to react to my predictions in about a year's time or so. Thanks very much, take care.
Thanks for watching, I'll see you guys next time.